Historical foundation in education refers to the study of past events, movements, and systems that have shaped educational practices, policies, and philosophies over time. It involves examining the evolution of educational ideas, institutions, and methods from ancient civilization to modern times, including key figures, significant events, and influential theories. Understanding into the development of current educational system and helps educators make informed decisions about teaching and learning practices. We may learn from the past about what worked effectively, what mistakes to avoid, and how cultural values have shaped educational practices by researching the history of education.
The pre-colonial period is a very significant part in the history of education in the Philippines. Babaylans, or the shamans of the tribe, are the one who is tasked to teach the children of the tribe. There is no gender inequality in those times. Men and women have equal roles in society, so there is no policy in who are going to learn or not. Education in the Philippines prior to the colonization by the Spanish in the 16th century was primarily informal and varied among the different indigenous ethnic groups. It was largely community-based and a focus on practical skills. It was also focused on oral traditions and spiritual beliefs. Tribes like the Tagalogs, Visayans, and Aitas have their own systems of passing knowledge from one generation to the next through storytelling, apprenticeships, and specialized training. Overall, pre-colonial education in the Philippines was a holistic approach to learning that integrated spiritual knowledge, practical knowledge, and cultural teachings, ensuring the preservation and transmission of indigenous wisdom and traditions from one generation to the next.
The pre-colonial period is a significant chapter in the historical foundation of education, representing a time before the influence of external colonial powers. This era is characterized by practices of diverse and unique indigenous culture and civilization around the world. Understanding the educational system of this period provides valuable insight into the deep-rooted traditions and values that continue to shape the modern educational philosophies. In this period, the purpose of education is for survival, conformity, and enculturation. It's like tell me, show me practices or trial and error process. Pre-colonial period basically prepares their children to become wives and husbands. Fathers taught their sons on how to look for food and other means of livelihood, while mothers focus on household. It's like a foundation to train an individual to think or to work practically and theoretically. This period shows informal, incidental, and unstructured education.
Spaniards brought Christianity or Roman Catholicism to the Philippines and unification of many islands into one country. In addition, they built universities and schools. They also introduced animals from China and Japan. In Spanish period, the Philippines underwent deep transformation, and Spanish education played a major role in that transformation. Formal education system was established, and the focus of education during Spanish period was mainly religious education. During this period, the oldest universities, colleges, and vocational schools founded in Asia were created by Catholic missionary or religious orders.
Still in the Spanish era, the schools were only exclusives for the Spaniard students or elite, especially for the early years of Spanish colonization. The Filipinos were able to access education through the enactment of Educational Decree of 1863, which provided for the establishment of at least one primary school. Primary school in each town for boys and girls. There was a separate school for the boys and girls. Back then, the primary instruction was free and the teaching of Spanish was compulsory. The friars or missionaries were the ones who managed, supervised, and controlled the system of education. Education during Spanish era was then inadequate, suppressed, and controlled.
So let's proceed to the American period. American period has a substantial and long-lasting impact on the Philippine education. The focus of this period is to promote democratic ideals and democratic way of life. Due to lack of teachers and education, Tomasais, who are soldiers, acted as a teachers in education. They arrived on August 23, 1901, and in accordance with it, Education Act of 1901, Act number 74, refers to the highly centralized public school system. In this period, they also used English as a medium language. American period also instituted a public education system. They also introduced the three levels of education, which is primary, secondary, and tertiary.
The good influence during American period brought changes to the education system, yet it has disadvantages that affects the acquired skills of the students. The main problem during the American period that still remains even up to this day is institutions require students to develop students' English language skills rather than vernacular language due to that English language is the standard language globally. This problem has an impact on Filipino culture because the mother tongue of an individual is being buried while he or she is developing English language skills. Having changes in education is a great idea for students to have a wide range of knowledge. Yet, it is important that schools will not be the reason why students will miss a significant piece of learning.
The Commonwealth period. Education during the Commonwealth period are the aims, as provided in the 1935 Constitution, was to develop moral character, personal discipline, civic conscience, and vocational efficiency, to teach the duties of citizenship, to continue the promotion of democratic ideals and way of life. In this period, certain laws and constitutions were enacted for the goals of nationalism and furthermore providing support in the education system of the Philippines.
The period between 1942 to 1945 was marked by the hardship, violence, and oppression. Most of the schools were damaged during the World War II. So, the Japanese rebuilt it to open the schools for the Filipino children. Under the Japanese regime, their educational policy, as stated in Military Order Number 2, where the teaching of Tagalog, Philippine history, and character education was reserved for Filipino love for work and dignity for the labor was emphasized. They called DepEd before as a Department of Instruction. They stopped dependence in Western countries and they strive for diffusion of the Japanese language, which is Nihongo, in the Philippines and terminate the use of English language in school to stress the dignity of manual labor. They focus on tech book, which is vocational and technical, agriculture, values rooted in love for labor, PE, and singing Japanese songs. They taught Filipino being aware of materialism to raise the morality.
After war ended on 1945, schools that had been closed during the war years were reopened, a means of reconstruction on their facilities. The contributory factor was widely reported, brutalities that ushered in the Japanese occupation that the Filipinos did not experience with the same degree during the American period. Filipinos has not much enthusiasm returning at school first because they were suspicious in the Japanese on the second. Children was focused on helping their parents tide over the difficult times. Even though Japanese allowed them to continue using English as medium of instruction in teaching, Nihongo or Nihongo was later rejected to be studied at schools. This abrupt transition of learning from English to Nihongo or Nihongo caused damage in the sense of national consciousness
progressive nation after gaining independence. Education was also aimed at the full realization of democratic ideals and the way of life. This was reflected in various policies and practices, such as making the civil service eligibility of teachers permanent and daily flag ceremony compulsion in all schools, which includes singing of national anthem, also known as Republic Act 1265. Post-colonial of education in the Philippines emerged from a newly independent government's desire to unite disparate population under a common national identity, which was heavily influenced by Western conception of personhood and patriotism. This period runs from the independence of the Philippines in 1946 through until the end of the presidency of Estado Macapagal.
During the post-colonial period, the education was influenced by the Western conception of personhood and patriotism, wherein the imposition of the Philippine national identity has faced the capacity of violence rivals from colonialism. This situation leads tension between official education, which will teaching and learning as tools to erase differences among Cordilleran and Lumad communities. The unit of official education in the Philippines is philosophically rooted in the desire of post-colonialism. On year 1987, the President Corazon C. Aquino renamed the MEX, or the Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports of RA Act of 1982 to DEX, that is known as the Department of Education, Culture and Sports. It emphasizes the mastery of learning in general, and the introduction of the new courses, which are the YBT and the CAT, that mandates the use of bilingual policy, the separate use of English and Filipino instruction system. Tribalization of education system. The tribal education system refocuses the DEX function and